80% of our belief systems, what we believe about ourselves and the world, is installed by the age of 3. And everything else that we do is a replay of old stuff.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who's out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode.
Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. I am Bob Nickman. So glad you're here. My guest today is Meredith Herrenbruck, and we are going to be talking about Neuro Linguistic Programming and Soul Family Constellations, among other things. So stick around and find out what those things are. First of all, I want to invite you to visit my website, theexplodinghuman.com. Over there on that website, you can find all of the episodes, synopses of the episodes, photographs of my guests, a little bio on myself, and there is a donate button if you'd like to support the show. It will take you to Patreon, and you will get some extra content. So thank you for that in advance. Also, I have a YouTube channel. You can listen to the episodes there. That is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman, add the with Bob Nickman, and there is an Exploding Human Facebook page. So you can find me in a lot of different places. As I was saying, my guest today is Meredith Herrenbruck, and she is a practitioner of NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming, and we're going to find out what that is today, of course. And it is a very valuable tool in reframing and relearning belief systems, finding out where our old beliefs come from, drilling down into what those are, and finding out how we can change those things so we can have a more expansive and freer life. It's a really powerful method, and she explains it really well with some great examples. And also Family Soul Constellations, or Family Soul Systems, which is the ongoing issues that families have going back several generations, and how to remedy some of the issues that people have today based on the things that happened in their families in the past. Really interesting stuff. She's a delightful guest and very knowledgeable, and I love talking about this. I've been wanting to do something on neuro-linguistic programming for a while, so I was really happy to get her on the show. So listen in. This is Meredith Herrenbruck. Good morning, Meredith, and thank you for being on the Exploding Human show.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Where are you back, actually? Where are you located?
I am in Marin County in California.
Oh, okay, so I'm also in California, so we're in the same time zone. I want to start asking you about NLP, which stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming. Many years ago, I took a workshop and they taught a little about it. And I found it really fascinating as a way to observe human behavior and to modify your own behavior, but it seemed very complicated to me at the time, and I didn't pursue it. But it was absolutely fascinating to me, and I asked my friend Mark, who helps me book the show, can you find somebody that does this? Because I really want to know more about it, because I know it's been a very valuable tool for a lot of people. So I'm going to let you start with first tell us what it is and how people can use this.
Okay, so neuro-linguistic programming was developed in the 60s by two guys in Santa Cruz, and it was John Grinder and Richard Bandler, and they were in kind of the psychiatric psychology field, and through their intense analysis, what they started to discover was when you ask certain questions, you got very specific, more deep personal answers from a person, rather than maybe what we all know of as how do you feel and how does that make you feel and what happened when you were a child and so forth. NLP really gets into how you are creating your experience. Now, with that phrase, you go, well, I'm not creating my experience. My neighbor is saying these things to me and they're a jackass and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just getting angry and, and they're causing the problems. And so we've kind of been raised to go, the world is against us. I used to have that notion for many years. And, I'm at the whim of chaos and everybody else. But what is so fascinating and so awesome about NLP is we go, well, what if we did have choice? What if we did maybe actually create our experience on some level? Let's just start with maybe some level. And so NLP is designed to help you get to the root cause of how you are creating your experience. And what we're witnessing and experiencing every day is what we're thinking and what we're feeling and what we're doing. And as a master NLP practitioner, I look into, all right, what's the problem that you're having? I hate my spouse. I hate my boss. I don't have enough money, whatever it is. Or, hey, really deep stuff of, I have an addiction that I just don't know where it's coming from. I'm losing all these things. I really, really, really need a change. I need something to knock me out of whatever is happening. And so we always start off with, well, what would you like? And we start asking these gentle questions to start building rapport and connection with the client, with that person who is having these troubles and all these frustrations. And then we get to tease apart with specific questions on how they're creating that experience, how we're holding that trigger, that addiction, that whatever in place. Because if you imagine, we have so many billions of people in the world, we're all having a slightly different experience based on what we grew up with, what we believe about ourselves in the world, and kind of the rules that we put in place so we can survive and be safe and loved. Does that make sense so far?
Absolutely. I'm just completely entrenched in what you're saying right now, because I think most people feel the way you're talking about. They feel,
Yes.
I think a lot of people feel that they're a victim of life rather than able to navigate it in a way where they feel like they've got the power to make choices in a lot of areas.
Yes. And that is like the one thing, if I could ever impart any wisdom or help anybody, is to gently shift that track from you're at the whim of the world and that you are just a person bumbling along and just sucking it up and dealing with it, to, wow, well, if I felt and believed a little differently or more of a certain way where I wanted to feel good and safe and loved, and I'd still be okay, maybe though my thoughts and feelings are shifted, if I could shift that and I was able to still be okay, then would I do it? Could I be able to do it? And it could be from the smallest thing to the biggest thing. It doesn't really matter. But the thing that's so cool is once we start to navigate those waters and go, wow, okay, if I don't have to feel this horrible experience, then what would that be like? And so NLP looks into, well, if you could have what you'd like, what would that be like? What would you be thinking and feeling and doing? Okay. And we're starting to look into, okay, well, all right, well, that sounds really good over there. That looks awesome, right? You're calmer, you're more confident, you're, going after those goals, whatever it is, right? Or, hey, maybe the goal is, I just want to be able to wake up in the morning and feel a little happier and not want to just stay in bed all day. The goal could be, I want to be CEO of a company, or, hey, I just want my life to suck a little less. All are amazing goals and perfect for just what you need, right? So we go, all right, well, what do you want your life to be if you could wave that magic wand? And then we go, all right, well, how come you don't have it? What have you done to your world in order to be safe and loved and survive growing up? what we're really asking is, what are the rules and belief systems you've created and put in place that you don't even know about because you've had it for so long, and it was created in the blink of an eye of you're 4 years old and your dad's yelling because you dropped the ice cream or something on the couch, and he knows his wife's gonna be really mad, and blah, blah, blah. Everyone is trying to basically figure out the moment. How do I survive, be safe, and be loved? And we go, okay, what's option A and B that I know that are available? And we pick the best option that we think. We're like, I don't know. I've never been here before. I'm going to pick option A. And then we see if it works out. If it doesn't work out, we go, okay, let's put that in the do not do again pile. And then if it does work out, we go, awesome. I'm going to file that away into the let's do it again when I see a similar scenario again. But what sucks about our brain, and I'm just going to be totally blunt during this conversation, is what's really hard.
I love
right?
blunt.
Good. What's really hard about how our brains work is we're, as we are always trying to survive and be safe and loved. I'm going to mention that all the time, because if you look at any single choice you make, it is, how do I get rewarded and be safe and loved and survive the next moment? And so what our brain does is, if we go score, I get rewarded because now my dad's not yelling at me, my mom's not going to find out, blah, 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 blah. I've said I'm sorry well enough, and now I've cleaned the couch. And okay, I'm back in the good graces. I'm going to live another day. I'm going to, not have my toys taken away, right? We're creating the list of how am I going to be okay in the next moment. Then we go, all right, great. So we file it away, and then we store it to use for the next time. But what we don't do is we don't just store it for if it happens again. We go, well, wait a minute. If I have found out that this works, then I want to get rewarded more often. So sometimes what happens, this is a little tricky thing that the brain does, is we go, well, what if I find more situations so I can survive and create more of it because I know how to survive it? And so maybe you keep accidentally, this is how the brain tricks itself. We go, accidentally, I'm going to, maybe it's not ice cream next time, but maybe I'm going to accidentally drop a cup of water in the car, or I'm going to accidentally trip over something such that this happens, such that I get to pull out my little handy dandy reward system such that I can survive it. So there's this phrase, what you survive, you recreate.
Yeah, it reminds me of that disease that people have, where they have diseases all the time and they love to get sick because they get a lot of attention, whereas when they're not sick, they don't. So they become chronically ill people with new maladies for years. I'm laughing because it seems so strange to me, but I get it. If that's the only way you're getting the things you're talking about, which is surviving and getting love and attention, then you'll do that.
And the thing is, you won't know that you're doing it. You just see the behaviors and the feelings, and you'll go, but you'll live life and you'll grow up, from 4 years old and beyond. And then you're 20. And then somehow, like, I met one person who just was kind of a klutz, and we go, and all we see is the behavior and the result and the consequences. We go, but how am I tripping? Like, I have a full body. I have 10 fingers, 10 toes. I went to college, or I have my GED. Like, I'm fairly well functioning. I don't have any diseases. I'm not, I haven't lost a half of my brain, but why is this thing still happening? And the thing is, we think of, why is it still happening to me? If we turn it on its head and start to imagine, what is my part in somehow creating this experience? And that's the crux of NLP, is like, how are we creating this experience? And it's all boils down to challenging our system and looking into the root causes and the root framework of how are we creating this world such that you're getting rewarded. And sometimes people go, but I'm not getting rewarded. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not, I keep losing jobs, I keep losing this and da 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 da. But when you start to go through the session, well, wow, where have you felt these feelings before? When was the first time you had that feeling, those experiences, and so forth and so on? They go, I don't know. And I go, well, is it really old? Have you had it for a while? Oh, yeah. I don't know a time when I haven't felt it. And we'll eventually get down to probably before 3 years old, where 80% of our belief systems, what we believe about ourselves and the world, is installed by the age of 3. And everything else that we do is a replay of old stuff. But the cool thing is you can shift it, because once you open up the Pandora's box and you look at it and you go, and you offer challenges, go, well, do you need to feel that way anymore? Is it really that big? Is that trigger really, does everyone have to have that trigger? And you start to just shift and open up new possibilities. And then when the brain goes, oh, I don't have to have it all the time. I don't have to feel triggered all the time, but maybe only with this or only when appropriate. And so we start to make things less big and less clunky and less fixed. Because if we can create our experience, then we can shift our experience. And that's where the power comes from us. And we can shift it with help pretty easily.
I guess it should be neuro linguistic reprogramming in a sense, because you're going to program yourself in a new way, where those old belief systems and old behaviors don't. I guess you come to a point where you realize they don't work, and that's sort of the uncovering of what it is and discovering what it is. And then how do you discard those things and replace it with something new? What are those tools that you guys do?
Well, what we do is we make a better offer. We go, all right, now that we've uncovered what you don't want, and we've kind of started to flesh out what you do want, we go through what are all the challenges, what are all the things that are holding those old belief systems in place. What often we see is that the behavior is the problem. The consequence is the problem. We have to look at, well, what are we thinking about the world? What are we telling ourselves on a moment by moment basis that's holding all of this in place? So if we shift our belief systems and associations, then naturally the behavior is going to shift. The behavior is the result of all the other stuff that you're telling yourself. So for example, if we're going to go back to kind of the ice cream cone on the couch, and so now we kind of fast forward into the future on maybe this kid now believes that, wow, I never got any attention. This is where we get into like the weird reward systems that we create for ourselves is, well, wow, my dad never gave me any attention unless I kind of screwed up. So there's the good news, bad news scenarios. I totally screw up, which totally sucks on one hand and is horrible and you feel small and everything else. But my dad actually gets to notice me, and that's better than not being noticed. So we're always doing like the better than worse than scenario. Mm-hmm. And so then we set up, well, okay, well, it's not great, but it's better than this other scenario of not even, my dad not even knowing I exist. Now fast forwarded to you're always messing up and so forth and so on. You're in your 20s and 30s, and maybe now you're messing up in your jobs, because then you're getting that reward system, all those rewards, and your body's going ding, 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 ding. Great. And it's replaying the past so you can survive the past and get that reward. Now we go, all right, well, let's flesh out your relationship with your dad. Do you need to necessarily believe or here's really an official question we'd probably ask is, what would you lose of value if you did not get the negative, angry attention from your dad? That hits a pain point. Like I just kind of step into that. It's like, wow, that would really suck. That'd be really lonely, really isolating. And then we go, well, do you see how you've created such a beautiful experience for yourself? Yeah, you got some attention. It might not have been great, but it was better than getting nothing. And then you go, all right, well, do you need, now that you're older and wiser, maybe your dad has passed away, and maybe your dad has shifted and now he's kind of a cool guy now, that, well, is there another way now that we can have a relationship, or what would your child part of you that is still having this pain, what would you want him to know? Is that the only way to have a relationship with someone? And so you're broadening it out, because what we've done is as a child, this kid has overgeneralized a certain rule of I have to screw up everywhere such that I get the reward, when the initial experience, that imprint, was only with the dad. But often we overgeneralize and we go, well, that rule worked here, so maybe that rule works everywhere. And so you go, well, so we start to flush it out and go, well, do we need to have that rule everywhere? Does that rule still apply? What would you lose of value if you did get attention from your dad that was not angry and judgmental and so forth and so on? And so then the brain starts to go, oh, maybe there's a new way of thinking here. And so often it's like, I never thought of that before, because we've been so locked in one track. We don't know any other possibility. We hadn't been trained by our parents. Our parents don't teach us psychology growing up. They're just trying to figure out how to be parents and be a human like the rest of us. So when we start to update, what we're doing is we're kind of updating the systems and creating new train tracks, new neural pathways. And then what happens is the old, tightly bound belief system and structure goes, oh, I didn't know I could have that. I didn't know I could deserve it. I didn't know, like, all these things. We get into self-worth and confidence and, all these things. And when we start to relax the system and we offer new opportunities that work for that person, we go, oh. And then it just naturally the old tracks start to dissolve, and the new way of being just naturally occurs because the belief systems have shifted.
All of what you're talking about makes complete sense. The part that I'm a little bit wondering about is it's in the mind that you were talking about, but a lot of the times these things are so ingrained that the reactivity is so strong that even a little bit of mindfulness might change your knowledge of what you're doing. But how do you get to the point where you're not just automatically reacting in situations that, because it's so familiar for so long? Doesn't there have to be some kind of other connection besides the mind? How do you connect it to the emotions in the heart so you're not exactly having to think in the moment? Because I don't think people do that very well, that they don't take that pause to think about it. I mean, I get that it would be very slow if it was just knowledge. That it seems to me there has to be another piece to the programming.
So thank you. There are a few pieces to the programming. And what we do is we operate on the few levels. And this is where later we're going to even talk about Family Soul Constellations and Huna work, is because there are different layers of our experience that we're not really consciously aware of. The NLP is, yes, it says neuro, but it's the mind, body, soul connection. The information that we have stored is not just in our brain, but it's in our cells. We have muscle memory. We have our chakras, like our energy circles that are happening in our body. The information is stored not just in the brain. So when we're looking and exploring triggers and histories and pasts, and imagine this is like, when we are triggered, we're not having a memory in a way, like we are, but the memory that we're having is we are actually having a current experience of that memory, but it is a current experience. And it's so funny. There's this video from, I think it was Bob Newhart many years ago. And so there's this little story, this little 10-minute vignette, and this woman goes to the psychiatrist, and Bob Newhart, he's a psychiatrist. And so she sits down, and she's this phobic, triggered woman. She goes, I'm afraid to go outside my door. And she goes on and on about all her triggers. And she's starting to cry. And he just looks at her and he goes, well, stop it. And she goes, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, just stop it. Just stop it. And so it's this whole thing of, how utterly useless that just stop it, just stop the behavior, just stop thinking that way, just muscle through it. And my dad, I think, was a lot that way. I think maybe a lot of people who you go through Great Depressions, you go through recessions, you go through a few world wars, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, there is a layer of you just got to stop your emotions. You just got to do what you got to do. On one level, oh, I get it. And yes, there's sometimes where there's enough mental talk and just get your stuff done. But as far as the well-being of a person's soul and connection to themselves and being aligned and a little happier and being able to focus and get to their goals, is we have to uncover and let go of the fact that we have to muscle through things, because that's not how we work. That's not how our brains work or our hearts or emotions work. We're tied into muscle memory in all the cells. So when we start to do change work, and that's the thing, is once we've uncovered this whole beautiful framework of how we're creating our experience, we go, hey, here's some new offers. Would that be okay? Would this work out? And that person goes, yeah, that's okay. And, another way we do it too is, okay, well, not you, but if you could imagine someone who is already having the experience you want, what are they believing about themselves in the world? It relieves the pressure, because we don't know, because if we knew, we'd already be doing it. Mm-hmm. But someone else, maybe, I don't know, the Obamas or Einstein or, whoever it is who you admire and go, well, they've got it figured out. You go, all right, well, let's step into their experience. What are they thinking, feeling, and doing? And then what we do is we're like, okay, load it up. And so what happens is, like, when you're feeling, it's almost like a roller coaster. Right before you cross the edge, you're like building the anticipation, you're feeling all of that in your body. We go, okay, fill that up, all that experience. And then what we do is we actually put a physical anchor on your body. We put like one finger, and we ask permission, go, okay, can we touch a thigh or a hand or maybe any neutral place, like maybe a shoulder. And then what we're doing is we're creating a mind-body connection. So as they're loading it up, we're physically anchoring it. And it's an added layer of connecting into the mind-body emotional layers to then go, great. Okay, so now you're feeling that. Let's bring that into the youngest version of you that is already having the unwanted experience. And what you're doing is you're installing new information into those old patterns. And so what you're doing is you're scrambling in a way, and you're going, hey, these are some new pathways that we can have. And you can have that now. You're safe having that now. And that's how we it's not just the talking and the brain stuff, but we do the physical anchoring as well. We don't always need it, but it does help. Not forcing and consciously having to override the old system. You've already done it in the change work, and then you just turn off your conscious brain. And then about 3 or 4 weeks it takes to integrate. You don't have to think to be different. You just already are, because all this old structure has been dissipated. It's all gone.
Can you give me an example of someone that was, maybe a more remarkable shift than most that you've worked with, where you saw a really big change? I love case histories, and if you can't, that's fine.
I can tell you from my experience. I had certain phobias. Like there was one where I was phobic of spiders. And when I was growing up, my dad said, well, you should learn about the spider. My dad was very, always curious and about reading and learning. And so he goes, the more you know about the spider, the better off you'll be. Your brain will calm down, you'll know more, and da-da-da. And I go, And so I did, but all the pictures freaked me out. I would watch Arachnophobia and I would just submerge myself in, hopefully flooding my system such that it had enough experience that it wasn't going to die. And then, the belief creates experience sort of scenario that now maybe finally my brain and body would believe that it would be okay. That didn't work at all. And I think there's certain levels of psychiatry or psychology that do that, where they go, let's just immerse you so much. If you're afraid of chickens, we're going to put you in a chicken pen for 2 hours. And I heard about this story about a friend's client who had this, and they went to a chicken farm and it re-traumatized this person. It was awful. But my friend says, well, then we started working together. In half an hour, I turned off the phobic response and she was over in half an hour. And I'm not kidding. So to my experience was, I was deathly afraid of spiders. Then we go into NLP, we do a little session, we're doing mini sessions. And I finally uncover this root experience that I had when my mom was freaking out about spiders. And my belief system was, well, if she's freaked out and she knows more than me, so I'm going to copy her, because certainly that must be true. Because I don't ever want to make my parents wrong, because they're raising me. And if I think they're wrong and I go against the grain, then that's going to suck. So I'm going to believe what you believe. So I created this phobic response for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Within half an hour, I'm not afraid of spiders anymore. I can hold spiders. I can look at spiders. I'm not going to be all buddy, but I don't have that, oh my God, just like the terror building up in my body. And so it was a very quick fix. And the thing is, you don't have to do years of therapy. You need to know how the brain works to get into the root cause, what created it, and flush it out and go, well, are there any other ways to experience this? Can we turn down the phobic responses? You know, all those things, and it's all malleable. Here are some examples of things that were fixed.
Mm-hmm.
People who didn't want to travel, who were afraid of traveling. People who were afraid of asking for a promotion. They never had the confidence to get a promotion. People who didn't sleep well because they were afraid of something that might happen in the night. That was a phobic response from something that happened when they were little. Mm-hmm. Addictions, I think addictions ultimately, and they're learning more and more, I've read a lot of articles about it, that it's more of an emotional response to something in childhood. I don't necessarily believe it's always just, as they say, oh, it's a genetic hand-me-down, if you will. I don't know if I ultimately buy that. Because, like, for example, it's so cool. In the 70s, there was this rat study. And it's in my book. I describe it in my book, Becoming Ridiculously Awesome. Who doesn't want that? I talk about this study. And so this guy is studying rats and nicotine, the rats liking nicotine versus water. And so they put little water bottle next to a nicotine liquid bottle and seeing if they keep going to the nicotine or what, and how the addictions happen. How are they created? And so all these little rats are in their little cages and all separated in the lab and so forth and so on. And the rat addiction increased like crazy, and they kept going towards the nicotine. They go, oh, well, if it's available, the conclusion was if it's available, then they're going to go for it. But then later on in the studies, he goes, well, wait a minute. I wasn't, or they weren't analyzing if it made a difference whether they were in a community, because all these rats were isolated and they didn't think that that was a factor. So he made this beautiful, as they say, like this, the best rat community ever, like with grass and caves and tubes. And I mean, it was just like this this rat playground. And so then they offered the nicotine water and the regular water. The results were completely different. The rats were so happy, and all the chemicals of the serotonin, everything was naturally boosted in their systems because of community and fun and happiness. They didn't even go for the nicotine because it wasn't missing from their system. It wasn't replacing what was lost. There was no loss. So that's why I talk about addictions, is I think it's more and more about addressing the emotional needs that we're not getting, because once the emotional needs are filled, then our chemicals will shift. Like, I'm not saying always, but I think more often than not, let's go there first before we just automatically dole out pills and, you are deficient in these sorts of things. Like, let's work on this social, emotional stuff first and get you to a really good neutral level. And then we'll look at all the other genetic markers and so forth. So anyway, addictions and PTSD, those things can, I think, be turned off fairly quickly.
Really interesting stuff. I was just thinking about my own past of growing up in a house that was kind of a little bit sad, a little bit controlled. a little bit, I mean, it wasn't majorly messed up, but it was definitely, this was the overriding kind of feeling, not to go too outside the box, to be, not too wild, none of that stuff. And then when I hit a certain age and I wanted to do those things, I needed some help through drugs and alcohol. So I did it a lot. And then I started to really like it. And then it really became the only way I could release these kinds of joyous feelings. And then I got, then I created a problem, and I've since not, I've been sober a long time now, like 35 years. So, but having to learn, I had to relearn how to do that stuff, or actually learn it for the first time, to experience those kinds of things that I think maybe a lot of kids had in a different home. I had to learn that myself over a period of time. And, I don't think I was addicted to those things by birth necessarily. There may be a predisposition in the genetics. I don't know. I'm sort of mixed on that stuff too, but I think the environment is really important. And but I did become physically had cravings and having to do it after a certain period of time of using. So that, thankfully was lifted from me fairly early on in my sobriety. But the idea of living life in a different way was brand new to me. There was a friend of mine, he used to say, if you want to find out why you drank, stop drinking and you'll find out. and so I
ouch, that's a rough way of doing it, but yes. Yeah.
Well, it was just kind of it was true though. It's like, who is this guy now who is the person that needed this stuff to feel a certain way? Now that they don't have it, now what are you going to do? What are you going to replace it with? And
right.
it was community, and it was, healthy living and meditation, all these things that create a sense of well-being and community that had to replace the thing that was missing. So that's one of the reasons I do the podcast, is because I had to learn this stuff all on my own. There was no, and maybe even that statement is not true. Felt weird when I said it, but I mean, I did the work that needed to be done with the help of many other people. And so I've been very curious. That's why, I told you before we started that I had done a Neuro Linguistic Programming workshop many, many years ago. And I've done a ton of this stuff, and that's how I started this. But this idea of being able to change and create your own new life, new reality, new set of beliefs is really the whole key to what I'm doing on this show. And I think that what people maybe don't realize, that there is possibility to not be a slave to your past.
Amen. Yeah. I grew up with my own troubles, if you will, and I had a childhood trauma that was swept under the rug, by my family. I love my family, and they're awesome, but no one's perfect, and no one knows how to deal with every situation perfectly all the time. So, but it took many years of my own trying to figure it out and figure out the solutions for me. So I understand it's really lonely and it's isolating, because when you don't have someone guiding you, you're going to just go, okay, is this going to work? Is this going to work? What's, and psychology, I think, has shifted so much. The whole world of, I guess, mental health has shifted, where now you have, what is it, EFT, you have tapping, you have cognitive behavioral therapies, you've got craniosacral, you have Rolfing, you've got Feldenkrais, you have all these things that are, how do we express, how do we uncover the problem? Where is it coming from? And how do I shift such that my baseline is neutral and not absolutely in the depths, making, where I feel small, sad, lonely, isolated, frustrated, and that I need to rely on distractions and addictions. I mean, shopping is an addiction. Twitter can be an addiction. Like anything can be an addiction when you are out of balance. It doesn't matter what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it can feed on itself, right? Where the body just goes, well, that's the only thing I know. And this is the quickest, between point A and B, this is the quickest hit. Great. And so I understand how hard it can be, and the pitfalls and the spiraling that we can do, the self-judgments we create, and all in effort to keep the system running as we currently know how to run it, right? And what I love about NLP and Family Soul Constellations and HUNA is that it allows for new possibilities, that you don't have to hold that stuff anymore, that you can let go of all those old systems and histories and energies, such that you're kind of neutral, slightly positive as a baseline, that you don't have to carry all that stuff. You don't have to carry your family histories and all of these things, such that, wow, okay, well, where do I want to go? And I remember when we were just starting out NLP, and they're starting to talk about the precepts of NLP and this and that. And so we would practice on each other, and they go, what would you like? And I swear to God, it took me about 3 weeks for me to finally start to be more comfortable that someone actually gave a crap on what I thought. I know my parents always knew, but I was the youngest of three, or am the youngest of three. And I just wanted to stay out of the way. I did not want to get into it. So, and I just followed along. My brothers are older by 6 and 8 years. So that was more of where the focus was. And I just tagged along.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone finally asked me, what would you like? It freaked me out, because it hit my pain points of someone cares, someone's interested, and that on the very deeper levels that I might actually have value. And if you look at what is the real pain, it's not really like when we talk about what our pain points are, like clients will come to me and go, okay, I want to have a better job, or I want to have, easier relationship with my spouse, or whatever. Really, they care about, do I feel safe? Do I feel acknowledged? Do I feel loved in the ways I need to be loved? And when we heal those layers, then we will naturally become more confident, feel that we deserve it. Like things just start to shift. Our vibrations elevate, we're more expanded. We see opportunities differently, rather than, like the Eeyore, oh no, this is going to happen again today. I can't get out of it. It's like, well, wow, what can I bring to the table? How do I want to think about this differently? What rapport can I create in my relationships, right? We end up being more in the driver's seat and not the whim of everything else. So then our vibration shift. New people will come into our lives and new opportunities, because we are seeing things differently. Things that we might have actually seen or been crossed paths with, our filters never picked up, because we're like, oh, ping it. It's not in my wheelhouse. This does not reinforce my belief system. So we don't literally see it.
Yeah.
But once we now are in a new awareness, then we can go, oh, I'd never seen that before. The funniest thing is when you get a new car, I remember I got a Mini Cooper. It was my first new car. And it was this convertible. And I loved it. It was bright orange with black or white bonnet stripes. And I went everywhere in that thing. And when I bought it, I was just like, this is my car. This is awesome. I was just loving it. And you know what? Suddenly everyone else in the world had Minis too.
You saw a lot of them, right?
Right?
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I didn't realize there were so many Minis around here. And they were always there, but my filters weren't picking them up, because it wasn't what I was focusing on. So when we shift, the world shifts. And it's that, the universe always will give you what you want. And so you have to really understand what you want, how you're creating your experience. So then if you want to shift it, then the experiences will shift too. And you don't have to think about it. You don't have to muscle it anymore. It just naturally is.
I have this character trait.
Mm-hmm.
I'll call it a trait. some might call it well, obviously it was a survival tool, but I have the hardest time not doing it, which is I'm extremely defensive. So if somebody will say something to me that I perceive as being where I think I need to defend myself, I will not only defend myself, I will turn it around onto them and make them wrong. And I know where it came from. I know why I instituted this behavior. It doesn't work for me, and yet it rears its little head mostly mostly with, well, with everything really, but mostly in my relationship with my wife. She's like, God damn it, you are so defensive. I go, well, I had to be. I know I don't now, but I think I do.
Right.
Such a it's and it's not like a major thing that's gonna like explode a relationship or anything, but it obviously is a source of annoyance to her and also to me, because I get the the backlash from my own behavior comes back. It doesn't serve me at all, not at all.
Right. Currently, no, it doesn't, but it did help you then.
Yeah.
Because if you're whatever was coming at you, the base part of our brain, the reptilian brain, which we call the critter brain, it deals with the 5 F's: fight, flight, freeze, fornicate, or have fun. Right. And so when we get in that fight or flight mode, we pick the best option. And some people tend to be more in I'm going to be in the fight mode. For myself, I tend to be more in the freeze mode, like just duck and cover and just, I'm going to turn invisible. And those are survival tactics, and they serve us well. What's tough though is then when we're in the fight or flight response, the front part of our brains, which is the more modern aspect, the neocortex, the frontal lobes, that handles, like when we are fully calm and happy and we've just finished like our vacations, we think better, we feel better, we are connecting to different parts of our brains, right? We're more just everything is firing, everything's aligned, and it's awesome, right? And you're just go, go, go. When we're in the fight or flight, it's the chemical shift. We get into that kill or be killed sort of scenario. And when anyone breathes a word of something that you need to defend against, that you feel you need to defend against, you go, aha. And I'm not going to just defend, I am going to pummel you so you don't even think about doing it again. But that's the belief that there's something that you have to defend. And of course, I mean, it makes sense. You don't always have to do that. And that's where NLP goes, well, maybe we could just turn that off. Because there's a belief system there is something to defend.
I learned it. The behavior from my mother, who was incredibly defensive. Mm-hmm. And one day, this made me laugh so hard when I did this. She says she was saying something to me to try to make me feel guilty, which was another one of her fabulous arrows in her quiver. So so I said to her, do me a favor, stop trying to make me feel guilty. And she said, I can't help it if you feel guilty. And I go, well, I don't. I actually don't feel guilty. I just don't want you trying to make me feel that way. It's really annoying. And she just got really quiet and it ended. But it was such a funny moment, that this back and forth. But obviously my whole life when I was a child and I couldn't articulate or defend, that was going on. Those kinds of behaviors were going on and things were getting turned back on me. So not only, so I had to become defensive because they were being turned on me, but also because I learned it from somebody. So I get where it came from, and it's, it makes me laugh now, but I still do it. I wish I, was a little bit more, right. Able to, not be, I guess it's really what it is being afraid to be vulnerable and therefore humiliated and ultimately destroyed.
Well, right. I mean,
that's what it feels like.
Sure.
On a visceral level. Yeah.
Total visceral. And that's the thing is, I think we underestimate the importance of the experience when we're little. So I have two girls. They're 3.5 and 6.5. So I'm in the throes of them learning how to be friends and sisters.
Yeah.
And, COVID and everything else. But I find it funny because when you're little, you're just absorbing and you're just taking in information. You're trying to figure out how your body is operating. And then you're going through potty training and how to feed yourself and then how to deal with siblings. And you want to chase the dog all the time. And then your parents are saying, please don't chase the dog all the time and pull its tail. And then I said, right. And then I see my daughters, it's so funny. So our youngest, they'll have this little fight of, well, that's my toy. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Right. No, it's not. And it escalates and it gets, and they're saying the same words because they don't have better words. They don't know the whole navigation of conscious speech and togetherness and oneness and all this stuff. It's like, no, the ego is going, but it's mine. And we're dealing with willpower. And if I just yell more, then that will solve it. And it's funny because then I walk in, I go, guys, I'm not always super cool, I'll be honest.
Well, no parent is. I've blown my stack a million times. My kids are older now, but I just remember going, I could easily just pick you up and throw you into a wall. I mean, I never would do that, but I think it. I'm like, you are horrible.
Yes.
A friend of mine used to say, if a baby could do it, it would strangle you for a cookie.
Oh my gosh, it is so true. Yes.
You really get to see that sort of base level, primal level humanness in young kids. They're also very sweet and adorable in that other way, but that nature of who we are as animals really is, obvious because the tools to be socialized aren't there yet.
Not at all. And the thing is, they're freaking out and angry at 3.5. And here I come in totally guns blazing as well, because I can't stand the anger and the noise and the quote irrational, emotions happening. It's rational for them because that's where they are developmentally. That's my conscious brain thinking. My body and my heart wants to do exactly what you're saying and just like annihilate the whole thing and just yell and scream and go, if I can't control myself, how am I expecting them to do that as well? And so when we're little and we're going, okay, I'm just trying to duck and cover, or I'm going to fight, or I'm going to try and navigate this behavior coming towards me that's manipulative, that they're dealing with their own things. And you just go, how do I do this? So it's often we go, okay, I'm going to acquiesce, or I'm going to try and be bigger than and better than to just get you to stop. So then I can be at peace again. We're always trying to find, how can I be at peace? I recently, last week, butted heads with my husband, and I finally uncovered something I didn't want to deal with. And I go, oh, I realize why I did that. I was in avoidance mode and blah, blah, blah. And I go, oh, but then once I uncovered it, here's the great thing is once you uncover it, often just acknowledging where it comes from, you can kind of forgive yourself and kind of lay it to rest a little bit. But if we keep it hidden and dark, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you end up in your current life just kind of thrashing about, and you can create real losses and loneliness for yourself. Yeah. You lose friendships, you lose relationships where you're like, but I just want to have friends. I just want to connect. But how am I still not connecting with these people? And so you're at odds with yourself.
Now, here's a question. Did you apologize?
I did.
Wow.
I did. I apologized.
He's a lucky man.
I know women never apologize, right?
I was just thinking people that I encountered in my past when I was coming much more from fear, and they were coming from a love place, how disarming it was to be around them. And they would disarm me with that sometimes, and sometimes it would take a while because I was my first reaction is, what does this person want? I'm suspicious. This is bullshit. This is a phony. I mean, I had all that stuff in place, but then there's an energetic thing about people that are when they're in that place that you kind of go, and then I would feel sort of like icky about myself. Like, I'm so awful that this person is so great. They actually are this, and it's not bullshit. And then I would go,
oh, I can actually relax around this person. It was, and it would happen once in a while where I would just be completely disarmed. And a lot of times those people would become my friends, because I felt so comfortable around them. And it's an interesting thing, to remember that when you're feeling, when the armor is up, and you're writing a script of judgment on somebody and assuming what they're feeling and thinking and why they're behaving the way they are. I mean, I can build a case in 5 seconds about why someone is a piece of crap.
Good survival skills you've created for yourself. Well done.
Right?
Yes.
And I'm going to give you a little tip in child rearing, since I've been there with 3-year-olds. Somebody said this is such a great thing. This helped me so much when I would be my wife or I would be getting, upset and with the kids. Somebody said to my wife, she makes a much better 3-year-old than you do. If you go and try to match her at 3, she's going to win.
Yes. Oh, man.
And that was a really great. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm being a 5-year-old. I'm being a 6-year-old. So I love that whole stuff. I want to do a whole episode on kids because it's just and child rearing. It's just such a funny topic, which probably might bring us to the Family Soul Constellation piece of this interview, which look how I segued into that.
I love it. Well
how
done.
How about that? I did it.
I know.
No intention of doing that. It just happened.
So Family Soul Constellations was discovered by Bert Hellinger, I guess, in Germany. And he was a psychoanalyst, I believe, or psychotherapist. And why I say discovered is because he was working with a female client who had father issues, if you will, or one aspect that he was working with her was, in relation to her father. And so they had kind of a role-playing session or part of the session. And he says, okay, why don't you imagine that you're so many years old and, step into that younger version of you sort of thing. And what would you have liked to say to your dad and so forth and so on. So they're role playing. And so what he did was he kind of stepped into the role of her father. And he turned off his higher functioning conscious brain and just kind of sat there and was listening to her and so forth. And then he started to just kind of pick up, as a medium would, he started to pick up information, and he started to say phrases that she just looked at him with eyes wide and go, you've never met my father, have you? Sort of thing. And he goes, well, why, what? And she says, that's exactly what my father would say. And, and so it's like the first one, passed off as such. Okay, coincidence, whatever, all fathers are the same. But over time and over this kind of learning and discovering and practicing, he started to uncover where that he was able to kind of download, and subsequently other people can download information about family systems. And what happens is that stuck energies in family systems, say from 3-4 generations back, if it's not dealt with, or if it's swept under the rug, or it's something that is so big, the loss is so great, that it creates kind of this ripple of entanglement, that when it's not healed, the younger generations unconsciously will grab onto it and say, in effort to say, I love you, I will grab onto this to relieve your pain. So grandmother, if you had this pain of, I don't know, maybe there was emigration or you lost a spouse, in effort to stay in the family system and be acknowledged myself, and to take away your pain, I am going to replicate that pain in myself, as to point the finger and go, here's some pain that needs to be dealt with. And so what we see on the surface, the consequence is addictions, isolation. I mean, it could be chronic pains. It can come in so many ways. But what's so neat is so what happened is over time with I guess Dr. Hellinger, Bert Hellinger, he started to notice patterns. And so then he wrote it down. He wrote many books on it. And I know a few people who have studied with him directly. And this work is so insanely awesome because when you uncover the stuck patterns, just like in NLP, we drill down to what's the root cause, what's happening. And we look at, wow, there was war, there was emigration, there was miscarriages, there was suicide. I mean, just big stuff, heavy stuff that we don't know how to handle. We shove to a corner of our consciousness and go, I don't know how to deal, but there are echoes of that energy translating through ourselves and our families. That if we, in this constellation where it's kind of like a space or an area out of space and time, where we have representatives stepping into cards that we don't know what they say, it's all double blind, and we write in the cards of mother, grandmother, root cause of the problem, etc. And when we get information, we find out, well, wow, here's the pattern, and it's not an appropriate pattern. If someone is standing in the corner looking out and going, I don't want to be here. And the information is like they're nervous and they're pacing and this and that. Well, that doesn't seem like a very happy person. Okay, so what's the problem there? So we look at what is being exhibited and what the problems are. And then what we do is we offer a resolution in this format. And what happens is when we do that, it creates a ripple effect through space and time. And it sounds so, quantum physics, but maybe it is. But what happens, and I've seen it over and over and over again, is that characteristics shift within the family, the dynamics shift, certain chronic issues tend to go away or be dissipated. Because when you shift that vibration, you shift that energy into, well, now things are right. They are appropriate. Everyone is standing in their power, and the love is flowing properly through the generations. Then the current generation who was previously having those problems, well, if the problem is solved, we don't need to have those energies anymore. And it just kind of dissipates. You can uncover old family histories that you didn't know existed at all. You can figure out sometimes you find out, oh, this person actually had an illness that they never told the family about. Or, oh, there was another family, or there was another child, or there was a miscarriage. Like wherever there's that pain that no one, tells about, when it's covered up and held tightly, that creates problems in the family system, and the younger generations will grab onto it.
It's like it's passed on in an unconscious way.
It is.
And it's like an energetic carryover.
On the surface, we in the Western world, with pharmaceuticals and Western medicine, it has its place. But I really have gravitated more towards the shamanistic perspective as a very important layer of healing. NLP and all these other things that I've told you about earlier, like find a beautiful combination, because they all hit a different layer of what needs to be healed, and do what speaks to you. Look at all these things of these physical symptoms with my clients and what is exactly happening. So that is about diabetes. I go, okay, well, there's this something about sweetness, and maybe the sweetness is lost from life. Where did that happen? How many generations back? On what side of the family? I will tell you, I have never been stumped. We will always come to some root cause. I will always get images on my head, and I'll go, like last week, I worked with someone actually who did have physical ailments. He's in the pharmaceutical industry. So he's an MD, he was a surgeon, like very, well-to-do. I mean, he's very bright. But he had digestive issues, and always digestive issues. And so that we see as a physical symptom. He goes to the doctors, they go, nothing's wrong. You don't have leaky gut. You don't have this. You don't have any genetic markers. You don't have any allergies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So where is it being held in your awareness? Is it in your mental state? Is it in your emotional state? Is it in your physical body? Is it in your spiritual body? I always look at those 4 layers, and that's why I use NLP, Family Soul Constellations, and HUNA. They deal with the different layers. And then we go, where is your energy stuck? What needs to be addressed? And how can we do that with love and compassion and support? We did it constellation style. And so for this gentleman who had these digestive issues, and I'd been working with him previously for 2 other sessions. And then, and so we uncovered a lot, and there was greater ease in his digestion. But I go, let's just dive into Family Soul Constellations. It can be for anything. And so we looked for the root cause. And we ended up going back like 3 generations. And I go, okay, there's a sister and a younger brother. And, they got in serious trouble. And they were just scared out of their minds. They did something that was kind of an accident, and they were just messing around. It was like on a family farm sort of thing. But I got all this information, and I just flushed it out. But what was so interesting, and what I want to share with you, is that I did not know all his family history on how many aunts and uncles. I knew a little bit, but I didn't know 4 generations back how many siblings there were. And I go, oh, there was an older sister and a younger brother, but they were younger in the family. And I go, okay, so tell me more about, that generation. Well, it was the youngest 2 siblings. It was an older sister and a younger brother. I go, oh, okay. So that pans out. So as we uncover the fear state that was created with these 2 kids who kind of screwed up, and then the father who came at them with their uncle, this is what was coming up for me, because I do a lot of kind of this medium work. And I go, oh man, so there was the event of the huge anger and the kids being freaked out of their mind and being so, they felt so responsible because it kind of related to something about their well or well water, like they dropped something down there, or they poisoned it, or it wasn't poisoned, but it was something. Anyways, getting all this information, the stress that these kids carried forever translated down the generations, such that my client was carrying that stress for them. And so in effort to say, I love you, because he was not getting along with his really tough brothers who were he was the youngest of 4. There was not much love going on in his family directly. And so it was another way to stay connected in the family too, and say, I see your pain and I will hold that for you, because I want to make it better for you. And I want to connect with someone, because I can't connect with my brothers, can't connect with my parents.
Did you find that once you started doing this work, you became more tuned to picking this stuff up from people, or did you always have that sense that you could do that?
I always could do it on some level. When I was little, I would have premonitions, meaning I would have dreams about 6 months before something happened. And so then when 6 months later happened and there was this event, I would go, wait a minute, I saw this before. Some people call it deja vu, but I would remember, no, I had a dream a while back about this. And I started to get better. It used to freak me out. But then in high school, I started to get better, at which point I could actually say in my head, while the person was talking, exactly what they were going to say. And I knew how the situation would turn out. So with that, I started to read lots of books on how the universe worked and how is this possible? How could I see the future? And so I started to learn to hone my skills and take classes and go to retreats and meet really amazing teachers who could help me. And so through all of that, you just learn to trust your intuition more, and you just trust it. There were a few years where I go, no way. Like when I started to clear houses and properties, and I go, I'm just making this stuff up. There's no way this is actually happening, because this is just an image in my head and so forth. But what I do with all my clients is I always do a double blind, meaning I will tell them that I'm going to clear their house, but I don't tell them what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, or what exactly the results are until later. And they'll tell me, okay, hey, my living room just feels off. It's not comfortable, or this bedroom feels weird. My daughter, for example, my daughter has been afraid ever since we moved in of going into this room, just freaking out, can't go to sleep. So what I did was I cleared the house. The mother knew kind of what I did and where the issues were, but we didn't tell the daughter. And so I wanted the results to be true and correct. And so I checked in a day or two later, how's it going? And she says, oh my God, my daughter came home, was fine. We had dinner, etc. It was time for bed. She walked straight into her room, didn't even think about it, didn't scream and cry and fight with me for like half an hour. She goes, I've been doing that for 4.5 years. And she has never done that since. So
Yeah. Well, the room I'm in now, in my house, when we moved in, it had a weird feeling to it, and it also was the only room that had the smell of smoke. And
interesting.
Yeah, and then we burned a lot of sage for about a week or so, and we come in and just say a prayer. If you're in here, whatever you are, it's time to go.
Yeah.
Not hostile or anything, but just like this, and we did this, and it went away, and it was it's been fine ever since. There was never that. It was like a kind of a creepy feeling, and then we found out later somebody had been I think shot in this room that I'm in, or injured somehow. That we'd found out after this feeling that there had been something that had happened in this particular room with, I guess, I don't know if it was the family that lived here before us or before that. And, it was just interesting. I didn't take it as anything other than we solved the problem. And, I didn't want my kids sleeping in here though, because I was just like, let's clear out this weird energy first. And we didn't paint or anything, but the smell of smoke left. It went. And it wasn't replaced by the burning sage. It was just gone. It took a while. It took a couple of weeks.
It does.
And it was cool though.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
And that's what's so interesting about working with ghosts and spirits is that they bring their baggage, and sometimes they bring sense. Sometimes they are strong enough to turn on and off electricity, light switches and that sort of thing. They can cause disruptions in your dreams. They can just kind of make you feel uncomfortable in a room.
Yeah.
I mean, they could do lots of things, and they're there because sometimes they're angry or they don't know that they're dead. And so maybe what happened for you is you acknowledging and saying, hey, I don't know if you're dead yet. But
yeah, I don't know.
We're, it's 2020 or 2021, and we're here now, and can you move on, please? And then sometimes they're like, oh, sorry, my bad, I didn't know. So I have so many interesting stories about that because it's fascinating. The whole ghost world is very fascinating to me.
And I think the hardest part about really grasping that stuff is because it's far more subtle than what we do in our waking day-to-day hours. It's just subtle. That's why it you can't grab onto it like I can grab this microphone. It's in my hand. It's a little bit different.
It's very different. It's really subtle, fine vibrations. And again, it's like the more you practice even meditation, the next day you're going to be that much better. You're going to be more focused and so forth. And intuition and awareness like that, it just takes time. And the more you do it and the more you connect with other people who've had similar experiences, you just go, okay, what I was feeling or picturing or whatever, those are real things.
Plug your websites or website. Is it 2 websites or 1 website?
I have 2 websites. They all really operate kind of at the same focus, but my main one is livingyourawesome.com. And that's more of the NLP and Family Soul Constellation work.
Okay.
And that's where you can buy my book, Becoming Ridiculously Awesome. Who doesn't want that? And I also have ghostfreeproperty.com, and that's more for clearing people, places, and things of unwanted energies and attachments. And have lots of clients. I've cleared lots of different sorts of things to really good results. So those are my 2 sites, and I invite anybody to look it up and see what they see. And I offer free 20-minute consultations, just for anyone who's kind of curious and wants to have a one-on-one look-see, I do that as well. And so you can schedule that on there.
Oh, great. Okay, I was going to ask that next, but I didn't have to. Thank you so
There you
much.
go.
Yeah, I
Yes.
have enjoyed our talk immensely, and I hope you have great success in what you're doing. It's very wonderful and positive, and you're delightful. How about that?
Well, thank you so much. It was
Yes.
so great to be here. It was so nice to chat with you. It was
Thank
good
you.
fun.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Well, thank you. You too.
Thank you for listening in to The Exploding Human. Much appreciation. Please check out my website, theexplodinghuman.com, YouTube channel, The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman, and I'm also on Facebook. And when you're on the website, go to the donate button and you can support the show and get some extra content. Or you could go directly to patreon.com/theexplodinghuman and do the same thing. Much appreciation, and thanks so much again to Meredith for coming on the show. Great talk. Loved it. Love you guys for coming to the show. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.